Recording in progress.
And then we usually have something about 1300, 1400 GMT where we'd have somebody come on and have an event of some kind. We experimented with various events, but we actually met like that for 10 or 15 years almost, at least 10 years and tapped in and regularly. But eventually that evolved into a conference and something we do weekly now called Learning Together, so we'll touch on all that. And then of course what we're doing here, Electronic Village Online, becoming a webhead is how ICT for ELT got started, I think. Teresa is here. She can tell us more about becoming a webhead. And also we'll touch on CMOOCs and XMOOCs, a little bit on that. That's what the book chapter is about. The link there. By the way, I always put my slides up as SlideShare. These aren't there yet. I just threw them up. I made a presentation kind of quickly. I've got some slides I'd like for you to write on. When you see a blank space, if you want to write on it, you can. Like here, for example. So the first thing I'm going to ask you about, do you feel that you are in a position more of scarcity or abundance? And maybe if you would want to make a couple of notes on that slide. What I plan to do, actually, if the slides get colorful or full or people contribute to them, I can make a screenshot of them, and then I'll put them in this slide will actually have a picture of your screenshot. So what do you feel, and in fact you can talk to me, you can take the mic and talk to me. Do you feel that you're operating from a position more of scarcity or abundance? Is learning, opportunities for learning, are they scarce or overwhelming? What do you think? I want to take a call while I'm waiting. Hi, I'm in a session right now. I'll call you back. Bye. Okay. I've got a request here to say more on both. Dijana says it's abundant in the text chat. Scarcity is what we kind of pay for. If scarcity is when information is hard to come by. But as we know, information is all over the place. Learning opportunities used to be scarce. Now, in my feeling, they're quite abundant. That's what I feel anyway. In fact, overwhelming. Some people think they're overwhelming. But a lot of people, what I'm actually talking about is isolation. I think that when we started Webheads, for example, a lot of us felt isolated. Or at the turn of the century, many people felt isolated. As Web 2 came along, this was starting to help us overcome our isolation. We're getting lots of text chat. There's some screen tools there if you want to put anything there, but if not, that's okay. Hi, Benjamin. Okay, he's made a few points about that. Teresa says abundance, it's overwhelming but fantastic. Aiden, hi Aiden. Aiden from Bali. Ooh, interesting. I was just there last summer. Anyway, another talk. Loads of available resources, that's true. And isolation by choice. Yes, there's a blog post about that. Kuros, not Alec, but George Kuros. He had a blog post that said isolation is a choice. Okay, so now good. We're getting some imperfect abundance. We're getting some comments on the screen now. Okay, I'm going to change to the next slide. This is from a talk that Sean Wilden gave at one of the events. There was a Cal IS IATEFL event that went on at the same time, the same weekend as ResCon actually. The two were kind of competing by chance. And Sean Wilden gave a talk about where he talked a little bit about isolation. So that's just to say that that was just earlier. Well, it was just at the end of last year, and that's just to say that this is still a topic in our profession. But I noticed that most of the people here feel it's abundant, especially if you're in EVO. You're probably feeling overwhelmed. Well, why? Here's one you should be able to fill in here. You can write on the screen here if you can. why do you learn online? Why do people learn online? Why do you think people choose to do this? Some people are confused online. Okay. To form a personal learning network. Okay. Yes. Okay. We have to make bigger fonts. Kind of small here. Let's see. I don't know if I can make this bigger. I can do it in my own time, of course. Comfort and interacting with different people. Fight boredom. Okay. Meet like-minded people. It's available. That's right. It's abundant. That's what abundance means. It's not scarce anymore. More exchange. Okay, so there are some comments there. Well, okay. I'm going to move on to the next slide. Nope, I'm going to stay here for a minute. To work with people all over the world. Okay. All right. Some more is appearing. And grab a mic. Why don't you take a microphone and tell us, why do you learn online? Teresa says, belonging to the Webheads and being in the... Teresa, come online and tell us what you're trying to say. There should be mics available.
Well, it's what I wrote, and I put in this online world was missing the word world. But I've met so many great people, so many great colleagues all over the world, interacted with so many, met so many face to face. And it's just absolutely fabulous. It made all the change in my career, and I never had this sort of knowledge and interaction and sharing, etc., that happens in this online world. It's absolutely fantastic.
Okay. Any more comments before we move on? So Aiden has Gamlin going in the background. Okay, anyway, this is what we found out from, well, actually, this is from a book by Cross. What's his name? J. Cross, yes, by J. Cross. And he wrote a book on informal learning. This is one of the versions of it. I'm not sure if this is the final version, but one of his book chapters is people love to learn but hate to be taught. That's kind of what we found out when we started up Webheads. The first Webheads community was writing for Webheads, and it was a study.com class, kind of. We were calling them classes back then. But it turned out that it started out, the classes were sort of email classes. This one, writing for Webheads, was meeting in three-dimensional spaces or virtual environments like the Palace, for example, such as existed back then. But we found out quite quickly that people were not interested in the email classes because, what we started out doing was we would email the participants and say, okay, this is a writing course, so let's write about something, and they didn't really like that. They would like to send emails, but they didn't really like to do projects. So when we started writing for Webheads, we found out that people just like to meet online and talk, and that was possibly, maybe they wanted to improve their English. A lot of them did. We were meeting second language learners, but they really responded to the community aspect. They sent us pictures and things like that. This was, keep in mind, this is turn of the century. Facebook came along in 2004. I think maybe a year before that, Moodle started putting avatar pictures online. So this was early days. This people putting pictures online was kind of unusual. So anyway, we just found out that people didn't really want to work online. They want to socialize, and that's work, believe it or not. That's how they learn. So this brought us to Webheads in Action. Webheads in Action was started in 2002, actually 2001, when we started organizing our Electronic Village Online event. And there's some people here, like Aiden and Teresa. You were back in that original group at the time. Maybe some others. Do you have any comments about Webheads in Action? Would you like to write anything on the screen or grab a mic? play some gambling music. So basically, Teresa and I were talking before we got started today about how
Welcome to the audio.
Check. To pass those techniques, those beginning techniques, on to other teachers in the Becoming a Webhead series, whereas I've kind of gotten a little esoteric myself, but that's just my interest. But I really appreciate how Teresa and others, the people for the ICT for ELT, have are still attracting people in the same way. That is, getting people just excited about forming communities online. So this was some of our community of professional people, English teachers, and these little galleries of faces would appear in places like in Second Life, for example. They became wallpaper. So this was kind of cool back in the day. Those links, I think, lead to EVO pages. Now, the links, of course, don't work here, but I'm going to put the slides up at slideshare.net, and they will then, they'll be linkable back at that time. So you'll actually have a document that you can link to. Any comments on any recollections of this era before I move on? So microphones are available. You're free to grab one if you want. Anybody recognize any pictures in there?
Vance, I think that we could remind some of the people here that in those days, back in 2002, these workshops were 8 weeks long, okay, which makes quite a difference. And a group of maybe 20, 30 of us who were extremely active in those 8 weeks decided to continue together because the deadline was at the end of 8 weeks. And that's how the Webheads in Action evolved and continued, and they have done great work. And that is how Daphne and I started with Becoming a Webhead, which lasted 10 fabulous years. And now we have our followers in ICT for ELT. That was, I think, a challenge on my part to them, and it's absolutely fabulous, that these things continue. So congratulations to all the team, the ICT for ELT team.
Absolutely, yeah. As we were saying, that this group of people started in 2002 and just kept growing and growing, and Teresa and Daphne and so many other people who took on the Becoming a Webhead movement and kept that part of it alive, and now the baton is being passed. So that's after 15 years. 15 years from writing for Webheads, but let's say 2002 up to now is 12 years. That's a long time for a community to still be viable. That's really unique in online environments. Well, anyway, what do we learn here? This is really interesting, I think. I mentioned groups, communities, networks. There's a little article with a link down there in TESOL EJ on modeling social media and groups, communities, and networks. That's something that an idea I kind of got from Stephen Downes, who has spent a little bit of time philosophizing on these topics, differentiating between groups, communities, and networks. I wonder if you want to write on the screen, where would you put ICT for ELT? Would you call it a group or a community or a network? How would you characterize say EVO in general, or what do you think? Where do you fall? What do you think of yourself as? Grab a mic. Okay, Larissa says community. Any other? I'll go a pointer at community. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Larissa.
Yeah. Yeah, Maria. Yeah, I think it's community because we always sharing and learning every day and every time we are together.
Okay. Well, yeah. So the majority here seem to think of themselves as community, and there's Etienne Wenger has done a lot of work on communities of practice. I'm sure you're familiar with those, and that's kind of Stephen Downes' middle stage in communities of practice. Well, they're a community, and they focus on a practice, and they try to help people learn more about the domain that they're interested in. And so definitely we are communities of practice, but networks, I think, a group, of course, is just people standing on the corner waiting for a bus, but they don't necessarily, they have Yahoo groups. We used to think of ourselves as Yahoo groups, for example. Yahoo groups doesn't maybe convey the same gravitas as, say, Google Communities. Google Communities is pushing it up a notch, but there's all these .NET websites around, and well, basically, when you look at connectivist learning, that's something that's really hot these days. Stephen Downes gave a very good talk at Nelly Deutsch's Connecting Online a couple of days ago, in which he really explained very well how networks work. Well, basically how courses work when they're MOOCs. And in fact, somebody asked him, someone expressed a little discomfort about the fact that they didn't get teacher time. Stephen showed graphs that showed, here, I'll do this on my screen here. Okay, so if you start a Moodle forum, you have this many participants. Okay, if you start calculating when your number of participants gets really high, blog posts is more like this. Okay, and then if you start counting tweets, the more people you have, they're going way up. Oh, how do I get up there? Way up there like that. So it's a curve that goes up. This is opposite on my computer here. Okay, so anyway, for forums and say Yahoo groups and things like that, you can only have so many posts. But the more you get out into the internet, the more you network, the more interactions you're able to generate. And it's really, I think of it, your community and my communities and other communities we all participate in, they're basically networks. The network is the personal learning network. That's the people that, that I personally, I see myself a part of this network. So, and I appreciate my communities. Webheads is definitely a community of practice, but it's also a network that, it used to be we knew who Webheads were. They joined the Yahoo group, or there was a way that you could become a Webhead. But now, I don't think we can actually, I don't think there really is anymore. We don't know who the Webheads are, because they're everywhere. And they're connecting on Facebook, they're connecting on LinkedIn, they're connecting through Google Communities. So anyhow, that's, I think the power of networks is really, what that is, the bottom line in a network is that your brain is connected to everyone else's brain, and what you know is really what you can access. And that's what George Siemens said. He said that that knowledge is in the pipes, in the connections. What you know is in your connections. And so basically everybody in a network is as smart as the smartest person in the network if you can access that knowledge. So I'm losing track of the text chat. If someone, yes, I'm saying, of course, people can be a Webhead without joining Yahoo groups. Exactly. Christina Costa, the one in Portugal. Did I get that right? Anyway, she said that webheads are like hippies. You always know who a hippie is, but nobody really joins the club, as it were. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to move slides. Here's again Webheads communities. We used to think of ourselves as communities, and then we started sort of widening the connection, especially with Webheads and Action Online Convergences. I mentioned Stephen Downs. He gave a talk at the one in 2007. He said something really neat then. He said that to teach is to model and to demonstrate, and to learn is to practice and reflect. In fact, this is actually a slide from his presentation. The graphic is. That's really heavy. I've heard him say that many times. Again, I actually heard him one time claim ownership of that. So he actually, I'm not sure if he first introduced that to us in 2007. The Webheads in Action Online Convergences were 72-hour events that are kind of like Nelly's events now. They start and just continue, like ResCon, for example. They just continue for days at a time, and the people who put them on are just really worn by the end of it, but really chuffed as well, Of course, they're wonderful experiences. But what we're doing in these conferences, or in the EVO sessions, is we're modeling and demonstrating to one another and learning by practicing what we learn and reflecting. And ICT for ELT is especially good at that. I just noticed in the posts I've been following that there's a lot of talk about tools and about using tools, and people are definitely practicing using the tools. And yeah, so people are modeling how to use them. In fact, actually, this is something that's come up in work. I teach at an air academy, and one of the things that students have to do is be able to bump their English up to be able to talk to control towers, because they're going to be pilots. So to get them speaking, it's kind of hard. So of course we get them to record. So one of them becomes the control tower operator, and the other becomes a pilot, and we sort of set up conversations. And someone wanted to. We were thinking, how can we do this? Audacity is, one possibility, but I'm thinking back. Wait a minute. What about Audio Boo? Because this has come up in my. I've learned about it through Webheads. Really, it's something that's been around for a while, but here we discovered that this is the tool we need. We can get the students they can record in Audacity, or they can't really, the bandwidth isn't so good for recording an audio loop directly, but that's just a technical problem. But basically, they can, it's very social. People are liking it quite a bit. So it's something that I learned from interaction with Webheads. If I hadn't been a part of this community, I wouldn't have known that, So, or maybe I would have Googled it and found out. But in any event, T-learning. What's T-learning? Teaching and learning together. Oh, actually, this teaching as modeling and demonstrating, and learning as practicing and reflecting, is something that I throw into the master learner category. And the master learner is something that David Warlick, a term that he's come up with. A master learner is what a teacher is. A teacher is a master learner. So the ideas of teaching and learning are kind of confused. Or if you think about what's on the screen here, to teach is to model and demonstrate, and to learn is to practice and reflect. If a teacher is a master learner, then that teacher, who calls himself a teacher and is also a master learner, is doing all four of these things all the time. So these are the things that we as professionals, and as professional teachers and as professional learners, and as we model how we learn and demonstrate to students how we learn, and we and our students practice and reflect on what we do. So that was a good point somebody made in the text chat. Benjamin, haven't you got a microphone? You could come and say hi to us, and you could tell us a little about your thoughts on master learning. Benjamin is connecting master learning with isolation, which was something I was talking about earlier. Have you got a microphone there?
Yes, hello Vance. I was just commenting in the chat my thoughts on really merging the notion of teaching and learning. I've heard of Stephen Downes' definition of these two terms, but it's been my experience, both as a teacher and a learner, that really these two terms come together quite actually more often than not. I find myself learning when I teach my students. I learn from my students every day. Hopefully they are learning something from me. They also learn from each other. So I think my approach has always been to try to find ways really merging this idea, so not to really separate these two different terms as separate notions, that really they come together quite well. And and the idea of mastering learner, going back to your earlier point, I think that being a master learner, setting the example of what it means to be learning, really involves sharing and interacting online in open spaces, much as we're all doing here, and really just opening up the learning experience throughout our own personal learning network. So I just wanted to throw those things out, and am enjoying the presentation. Thanks, Vance. I'll go ahead and mute my mic.
Yeah, well, thanks for chiming in there. That's exactly what I was getting at. That's exactly the point. I've said that there's no such thing as a language teacher, actually. I tell my students that sometimes. I tell them I can't teach them the language. They have to learn it. So, and as you say, it's really the way you do that is by learning from your students, getting them to teach you something. Then they'll be increasing their language without even knowing it. Okay, well, anyway, going on from Webheads in Action online convergences, which I mentioned in there, were very trying, wearing, intensive 72-hour events. They happen every 2 years. We couldn't put them on in the even years, and we stopped doing them in 2009, and we started doing Learning Together. Learning Together, if you do the math, if you take 72 hours of that you have in 3 days. Actually, we didn't get 72-hour sessions. We had some quiet hours, but we did that for 2 years, every 2 years. So that's 72 maximum sessions in every 2 years. Well, you can get 52 sessions if you do it just once a week, and so you get 100 sessions about in 2 years. So this is what we're doing now. It's a lot easier. Learning Together, there's some links to it, learningtogether.net. Is that Learning 3 Together? Oh boy. Learning Together, not Learning 3 Together. Learning Together. I'll fix that in the slides I upload to slideshare.net. So anyway, there's a slideshow about it, or the learningtogether.net/about has information which points you to where the calendars are. I think maybe I've got that on my next slide. There we go. And the learningtogether.pvworks.com is the wiki, where we try to get community members to write themselves in. You could do that if you want. If you feel more comfortable with the environment, you can just go to the wiki, join it. If I don't know who you are, I might make you a reader, but if I know who you are, I'll make you a writer. Or if you make yourself known to me and say, I want to give a presentation, I'll make you a writer, and you can just write it in. Or you can just let me know, and I'll be happy to write it in for you. But in any event, we've been very successful. Sometimes, right now, on that page you see right there, you see lots of events listed. Often we're not that lucky. Often we're just doing it week to week. So it kind of depends on the time of year. Right now we have events going into March. I think we're going to come up on a few empty Sundays. Aiden has promised to do a session, I think. And anybody else would like to, you're more than welcome. So March, April, May would be good times they're quiet times. So we do rely on people to volunteer to do those. But as I said, since 2010, that's 3 years now, we've had every week almost. So it's been very successful, and we've got some great recordings. I'm sure Benjamin is in there somewhere. We do a lot of hangouts, or sometimes we just meet in this space. Actually, we meet in whatever space people are comfortable in, so presenters can choose their own. Okay, Learning Together community. Thank you, Benjamin. Put our community page in there. So it's kind of hard to know where to be nowadays. I kind of like Google Communities personally. Shelley Terrell is using it exclusively for her ebook EVO session, the Crafting the ePerfect textbook EVO session. I think she's been very successful with it. She's certainly given me a good idea. I find MultiMOOC, my session, is a bit scattered. Because Yahoo Groups is where a community has been, but I don't think that community. I think the community is really. Yes, thank you. Yeah, Teresa says it's working great. Yeah, I think really the Google Communities is where I'm most comfortable, and I think I'm just going to stick with Google Communities from now on. At least that's the one that's really hot right now. You could kind of it's kind of like Facebook in appearance, and it's very good for getting information across. So Benjamin uses it too. Benjamin's got a community, TILL, Teachers for Interactive Language Learning. Did I get that right, Benjamin? You might want to put that link in the text chat as well. Okay, we were talking about Electronic Village Online. That's where we are now, where our communities are coming together into these networks. Teresa will be happy to see that I've got an article from Calico that she did a couple of years ago about webheads, about becoming a webhead. So that's what that link goes to. There is a PDF version, but that goes to the placeholder where you can download the PDF version. Do you want to say any more about your article, Teresa?
Vance, I wish I could, but my aging neurons let me down. Anyway, it was very nice of you to have the link here. Beth and I wrote it. We had a lot of pleasure doing it. We have a couple of other articles, and it was just, a fabulous 10 years. So thank you for pointing it out.
Oh, my pleasure. I was looking for a BAW link that would kind of encompass the movement, and I thought that was probably it. But if you Google BAW, Becoming a Webhead, you'll find pointers to all the sessions from 2012, 2013, I think was the last one, and then etc. So you can find a lot more about that. ICT for ELT, that's where we are right now. We're in the ICT for ELT session. We're kind of in a MultiMOOC session as well. I announced it on the MultiMOOC EVO group. The MultiMOOC group, I suggested to people in that group that they find a MOOC to participate in, because we're not a MOOC, it's about MOOCs. And so I opened the barnyard door, and everyone went out and into the sandboxes. So anyway, there's interesting articles at goodbyegutenberg.pbworks.com, and I think the Google community is probably the best place, but that's where, as I said, I'm more comfortable there. If you go to goodbyegutenberg.pbworks.com, you can find links to all the other places that MultiMOOC participants inhabit. So this is all part of a network. It's a community, but it's anyway, I sort of see it more as a network. And well, that brings us on to CMOOCs. What do you know? This is your slide now. You have to write down here. What do you know about CMOOCs? What do you think about MOOCs? Or what do you think of when you think of MOOCs? Have you had experience in MOOCs? If you've had experience, maybe you can write it on the slide. There's some tools by the side. You can use drawing tools. I'll see if I can put what I'm in right now. I'm doing Riso 14. So, oh. Writing in somebody's space. Okay. Someone's drawn a picture of a MOOC. It has horns. Okay. Corpus linguistics. Oh, who's doing corpus linguistics? Okay, I guess there's a MOOC going on right now with Dave Cormier, who is the inventor of the term MOOC. Well, there's some contention there. I don't know if I want to talk about that right now, but he's also given he says that Brian Alexander might have come up with it, but if you try to pin him down on it.
I said I absolutely cannot join that at the moment because as I say, it started 2 weeks ago, and it's 8 weeks.
University.
And since we're in the middle of Evo, I said, no,
third week. Well, tell us about it. Come on, grab the mic and tell us a little bit about it.
I sat down and went through the first part of what they were proposing, and I just didn't move for 15 hours. It's absolutely fascinating. I have always been interested in using concordances, but it's absolutely for everyone with any level of knowledge. It's extremely well organized, although there's no, the program is up and you can go to future weeks if you wish. You don't have to stay with the one that is going on. It's a bit difficult. You follow people, but I can't quite see how we really can. I think the platform it's all in one platform. I think that's a specificity, except for a Google Plus community which has been created alongside it, of course. So it's absolutely fabulous. Like Lawrence Anthony, who made the Ant Concordancer, is doing it, and wow, it's absolutely breathtaking. Okay, and I think a lot of people are hanging in and going all the way through there. It's, well, okay.
I didn't even know about it. That sounds interesting. Well, we were, talking about abundance and scarcity earlier, and this is abundance. This is what, there are so many MOOCs going on right now, and if you get into one MOOC, as Elizabeth says, it itself is overwhelming. There's an abundance of interaction going on in any one MOOC. So is this good or is this bad? Somebody mentioned in the text chat that she wasn't wasn't comfortable with MOOCs. Possibly you're not comfortable with the amount of the feeling of missing things. Benjamin's asking for a link to the Corpus Linguistics MOOC. You might be able to Google it. Lancaster University MOOC. I'll bet you could find it. And Maria Colusa says no one is comfortable at first. That's right, but you find that people keep coming back to MOOCs if they are, or if they can tolerate the chaos, they'll come back to MOOCs. And what do you have to do? You have to reach a point where you've swallowed abundance. You're okay with it. It's just there. That's the way it is. So you just pop into the MOOC and you do, like Elizabeth she's quite a star. She actually sat down and didn't move for 14 hours or something like that. Me, I might go in for a couple of hours and I get hungry, or I've got to be with somebody or something like that. So, but even if you go for 2 minutes, 2 hours, 2 days at a stretch, you're gonna come away with something. You're gonna learn something. So you don't worry about what you miss, because media is like that. There's a lot of media that you take for granted, like what's on television, or go to a newsstand and you see all these news items there, and you look at the covers of the magazines, and you might buy one or 2 or something like that. You might in there you're going to find a lot of information. You skim through and you find something, maybe read one article before you buy another, put it away, put it down, set it by the toilet, whatever. So there's information all around your house that you haven't looked at, that's in the airwaves right now that we haven't looked at. But we're accustomed to that. We're comfortable with that. It's okay. We can have a TV and not watch it for long periods of the day. But for some reason, people, when they get a Twitter feed, they think, oh, hey, Facebook, what's going on here? There's people posting. I don't even know what they're, I'm missing things. But it's not like that. That's just the way it is. That's reality. Don't worry about the fish you miss. That's right. So when you go fishing, you catch enough fish to where you're comfortable. You take a few home. You give one or two to your neighbor, and then you come back later when you're hungry again. But there's a lot of fish there that you don't really worry about. Okay, well, thank you for your comments there. I'm going to say a little, there's some, I think a moderator maybe, or is that me? Maybe I hit the buttons too much. Okay, there's just some information that when this gets online, you can go to these, we have some, a list of MOOCs at multi-MOOC, MOOCs that are going on right now. I didn't know about corpus linguistics. I should add that one in there. And there's a connectivistmoocs.org. Now, notice I'm talking about CMOOCs here, right? These are CMOOCs. There's another kind of MOOCs, the XMOOCs. XMOOCs are quite different from CMOOCs. But these are the connectivist MOOCs. If you're interested in connectivist MOOCs are, I think, are what Elizabeth was talking about. There are people very knowledgeable about corpus linguistics, but it's not a course where you go in and you just do this and then do that and continue that way. What you do is you go in and interact with people and you learn very serendipitously. And this has a lot to do with connectivism. These are the people who started the CMOOCs in 2008. Stephen Downes is one of them. The first course was connectivism and connective knowledge. I don't know if I got it right there. But anyway, that was CCK08. Connectivism and connectivist knowledge, I think that's what it was. And I mentioned that Dave Cormier coined the term MOOC, and he's doing rhizomatic learning right now, a MOOC on rhizomatic learning, which is really interesting. And he's got a very interesting personality for that kind of thing. George Siemens' seminal article on connectivism is something you could read. It's a learning theory for the digital age, I guess is what he calls it. And then Stephen Downes has written extensively on MOOCs and on connectivist learning. I think I actually had something over here. There's he's got 500 annotated references, which he actually gave up keeping up in June, but he had annotated 500 references on MOOCs. It's got to be the largest compendium up till last June of everything about MOOCs. And he's written, if you go to his ebooks, you can find that he's written a book on knowledge, on connectivism and connectivist knowledge. And that one is something like 1,000 pages. Then Dave Cormier also is giving a MOOC on rhizomatic learning, and there's more about that at his blog. So what about the other kind of MOOC? There's also something called XMOOCs. What do you know about XMOOCs? Can you write down here what you think about, what do you know about XMOOCs? Can you name a few, or do you have any opinions about XMOOCs? No idea? Okay, that's good. Coursera, Benjamin says Coursera, that's one of the famous ones. They give certificates, they do. A lot of times you might have to pay to get a certificate, or you might get a badge. Sometimes they award badges, but certificates, sometimes you can take the course, actually even the CMOOCs, they can be courses at universities that 20 people will be paying for and be a part of their program, but then 2,000 people will be there just for the fun. A new word, okay. CMOOC is a connectivist MOOC. A MOOC is a massive open online course, and they're kind of taking the world of education by storm now. They address the problem, they capitalize on the abundance in an era of scarcity of resources. So where people have trouble getting to and maintaining brick and mortar universities and buying books and things like that, there's really so much online. MIT was the first major university to put its courses entirely online. They might not have been MOOCs, just the courses were there, just the skeletons of the courses. But MOOCs are actually courses where people put the information online. Coursera, for example, has a lot of really good courses. George Siemens said in a recent talk that if he were to give a course right now, if he were a professor, and he would probably tell his students to sign up for a certain Coursera course because they could prepare the materials so much better than he could, and then his course would be talking around those materials. So that's an interesting concept. So, well, we've got something here on CMOOCs. Let's see. Select tool here. There we go. Oh, XXX MOOC. Okay. Okay. Elizabeth is going. Goodbye. Aiden is going. Okay. Oh, Eden is going. All right. Back to Bali. She's at the beach. Content is more predetermined with XMOOCs than in CMOOCs. Yeah, so XMOOC is really designed to teach something specific, usually. And it can even, some of them can use methodologies that CMOOC proponents say are a waste of, the potential of the digital age. So a CMOOC is where you learn from other participants in the course. An XMOOC is edX is one of the XMOOCs. Here's some MOOCs here. edX is one of them. Udacity, another one. Coursera is one that we've mentioned also. So you can get quite a lot of information. You can get courses. You can learn things. You can learn specific things. An XMOOC might robo-grade you, and it might award a certificate at the end if you pass the course, and they're often given for free. The first one was in Stanford University by Sebastian Thun, who went on to form Udacity, went on to start Udacity, left his tenured position at Stanford, as a matter of fact. So anyhow, that model is getting quite a lot of attention. Well, I see we're coming to the top of the hour. Any conclusions? Some people are writing in the chat, writing on the whiteboard. What conclusions do you draw from all this? Benjamin, you can come on and articulate some of these things you're writing in the text chat if you want.
Yeah, Vance, actually I had a question, not so much about MOOCs, but kind of going back to Webheads, had a general question. How would you characterize currently the activity that Webheads are participating in, thinking in terms of either being more course-like or presentational, much like these types of courses that you're presenting now, or are there projects where Webheads are coming together and actually producing something, for example, coming together to collaborate on a book or some other type of kind of more of a task-based learning approach? How would you characterize the Webheads currently if you had to characterize them in these two general categories?
I'm sure if we thought about it, we'd probably find Webheads who've come together to make books. I'm not sure. Sometimes Elizabeth Hanson Smith has put together books with Webheads, for example. Webheads are becoming more prominent at TESOL conferences where they're putting on sessions, for example. A lot of the presenters happen to be Webheads. People in the Electronic Village Online, for example. In fact, it becomes indistinguishable. That's why I say it's kind of a network. People will get into projects. They'll sort of maintain their Webheads roots, or they'll consider themselves Webheads, but they actually have much stronger identities in the project that they're on. And in a way, I've even done that myself. For example, I spend a lot of my time on Learning Together. I'm sure you spend a lot of your time on TIL, for example. But as someone who you're intersecting with Webheads yourself, I would consider you a Webhead. You must consider yourself one, or you wouldn't be here. So, but it doesn't. It's not that you've declared that you said you are, or it doesn't really matter. I mean, you're doing what Webheads do, and you're in the network, and also very much a part of our community. So, yeah, in my time it's been in Learning Together. So as I mentioned, Learning Together, it actually is a continuation of Webheads in the sense that we have always met online on Sundays habitually, and we're still doing it now, but in a way that kind of tends to be more sustainable. So Yeah, I don't know. Maybe other people could answer that question. Some things that Webheads are producing. There's some PhDs being done by Webheads on Webheads. Chris Johnson wrote one on. Chris Johnson actually, because of one of his advisors on his dissertation was Etienne Wenger, and so Etienne came to one of our Webheads in Action online convergences, and there's just lots of connections there. That things are getting done, but okay, so I'm trying to read this thing that's moving around the screen. It says, in the past, one had to graduate from EVO to become a Webhead. Now you just have to declare yourself. Well, no, actually, you never had to graduate from EVO to become a Webhead. You could have declared yourself at any time. So that was just that was one of the things that the becoming a Webhead people did, was they said, okay, now you've been through this session, join Webheads, But no, of course, anybody can. You can join by joining the Yahoo group if you want to do that, or you could join there's a Webheads Google community. There's a Webheads Facebook group. Make sure you join the right one. There's also the spurious one that James O'Reilly has started, and is drawing off a few people over there. But actually, I'm a member of that group, so when I see that someone posts something serious there, I message that person and just inform them that there's also the real Webheads group. And anyhow, it's a good echo chamber for him. People right on the screen, you can take the mic if you want. Any comments or any further comments or questions? And Benjamin, because you've come to it more as a network, you see Webheads as more of a network, yeah, more than a group or community. Yes, because you came in from the network, from the planets. You came from the planets, and now you're on this planet for a while, and you'll be off in your spaceship again. And we're connecting with the TIL community as well. I'm posting, for example, Learning Together events in TIL because I know you're interested, and so that's just a way the communities connect. The Google communities are connecting in a network. So each of those communities can be seen as its own. There's so many of them, there's fascinating communities. But anyway, once you join one, then there's your network. Your network is, I think we're all lost in space. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm just going to move on. I've got two more slides. They don't really say anything, but this is something that I wrote about MOOCs. One of my, if you go to slideshare.net/Vance S, all my slides are there, so you can really find. Actually, I brought a lot of slides in here from other presentations. Several of them from my ResCon presentation, and there's a link to an article, What's with the MOOCs, I wrote maybe a year ago. Okay, well, just one more. These are some articles about Webheads. This is going to be of no use to you here in the Illuminate session, but when I put this online, if you want to read more about Webheads, you get the slides. You can find this slide there, and then those links will be active. And this is my slideshare.net account. Was very light gray on my screen. Okay, I'm happy to stay for a while and take questions if you want. I don't know how you conduct these sessions.
Okay, thank you, Vance. It's me, Maria, again in Argentina. Thank you, all the participants. Hello to everybody, because I haven't said hello to some of you. Thank you very much, Vance. It has been a fantastic presentation. We had a question by Benjamin, but he has already asked it. So there are no further questions unless someone else wants to grab the mic and ask it herself or himself. So if someone else has a question, please let me know in the chat log and I will pass the mic to you. Okay? Is there any other questions? Everybody is saying thank you. Well, you can always read.
The mics are available. I think we've got just the two of us have mics, and there's one more mic available, so anybody can just grab it.
Can I just, Elizabeth and Gordon?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, but can I just say thank you very much indeed. I was absolutely thrilled to join you, even though I'm at work. And yes, I have to rush off. So see you next time.
Okay, well, nice to hear your voice, and anybody else who wants to speak. I always try to keep these things unpresentation-like as possible.
Hello, this is Rita from Argentina, and again, I want to thank you, Vance. It's great to be here with you and with all Webheads and talking about the Webheads. So it's been a pleasure once again, and thank you very much, Vance and Maria and all other participants willing to meet again as usual and learning together. Bye, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you for all the participants, and I think that it would be okay if we stop the recording. Right, Larissa?
Okay. Mm-hmm.